I think in terms of the asks that you've put there, there's nothing there that certainly myself or the council would feel uncomfortable with. We do understand the value of our mature trees. We do promote our tree stock in Brent. Our commitment is only to ever remove a tree if there are sound environmental reasons, or if a tree is healthy and unhealthy and is dying, or if there is a need to remove the tree simply because it is creating damage to an adjacent property as well. So that's another further consideration that's very much part of our programme as well. In terms of the footway programme, we will certainly replace any tree that we take out. That won't just be a small sapling, that's a commitment to provide a more semi-mature tree as a replacement in those instances as well. Certainly trees will only ever be removed as a last result, and only for the reasons that I've stated. And yes, certainly a key consideration for us as a tree service will be to ensure that appropriate species are planted, and commit to that by all means. Colleagues.
Yeah, I mean, Chris has fairly well covered the answers and agreed to the areas. I think the other thing that we're happy to entertain and consider, we're happy to entertain and consider the opportunity for potentially further trees within those roads if there's scope and space for them to be fitted in. So it's not something that we're looking just to remove a tree and walk away. We do realise that the tree stock is very important, and we are keen to increase our tree stock overall throughout the borough.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Alison. I thought that was quite a fair summary of things. I just thought I'll respond to some of the technical things that Alison was talking about. With the Connaught Road example, which is quite correct, we were planning to remove and replace the limes in the street. It didn't happen without being consulted, though, and it's quite simple, they said no, so we didn't do it. She mentioned the fact that the rationale behind it was to save money, and we are sort of unfortunately unapologetic. Yes, that was the rationale behind it. It didn't go ahead. You also mentioned a couple of the very recent valuation systems. The CAVAT one you mentioned that was used in Sheffield, it was pioneered here in London. It's been around a few years now. It's not a system we generally use, but we actually we valued them in Connaught Road using CAVAT. For anyone who's interested, it's a little acronym. It stands for Capital Asset Valuation of Amenity Trees. It's a way of giving an economic figure to an individual or group of trees. You also mentioned iTree. iTree is quite interesting. It comes from America. It's a system that was first pioneered by the United States Forestry Service, and it was famously used extensively in New York. And in New York, they did this similar exercise, came up with a financial value, and tried to use that as a sort of bargaining tool with the politicians to introduce more trees. A few London boroughs have done it individually, and we are going to do it as well. So we've just commissioned it literally very recently, and we hope to get the results of that within a few months. It's a desktop exercise, and the firm that will do it will try to put some sort of valuation on all our trees. So we obviously will be putting that into the public domain when we have it.
Thank you very much, everybody. So opening it up to the floor on the specific...
Difficult, but I think that is part and parcel of having a conversation and getting a working resolution for everyone. And I think the question was, do I agree to the 4 points? Sorry.
We're talking specifically about the question about resources.
And I'm going to come to that as well. Right. The resources, right? When you're trying to compare councils like Brent with Hackney or Islington, I'm sorry, I'm not in a race with any of those councils. Right? I have to take a look at what's happening in Brent and the resources that are allocated to Brent itself. Islington, I was in Islington Council just before Christmas, and it's a much smaller council. It's a much more affluent council as well. They have double the revenue budget that we have. So you just cannot compare the resources between, say, Islington and Brent. right, we as a council, we have lost £174 million, right? And that has meant, right, over the course of the last 8 to 10 years, right, we've taken some difficult decisions and difficult choices. And yes, right, we have had to take money out. I remember that our highways and trees budget used to be between 12 to 15 million pounds. At the moment, we're spending about 4.5 million. So when you have that kind of deficit, going from 12, 13 million down to 4.5 million, right, there will be implications, and we're seeing the implications of those decisions that we've taken. But the money that we've reallocated in making sure that we're protecting frontline services, right, is more about children's social care, adult social care, and just making sure that the older generation that we're going forward is protected and looked after. And we're spending £120 million a year on making sure that our adult social care budget is protected. And then we're spending another 35 million on our children and young people's budget. And we've taken decisions to make sure that we're spending the money to look after the young people and the older people, and to make sure that we're as some people may say, we're ticking along, just making sure the lights are on and we're sweeping the streets. If it means that we need to have a conversation about the reallocation of budgets. So somebody mentioned the Brent Connect forums that are taking place. In the current Brent Connect forums, we are actually talking about the council's budget and the 12 to 15 million pounds worth of cuts that we're talking about, that we have to find in order to continue the services that we're providing. The Brent Connect forum took place on Monday in Harlesden. And I have to say, right, it was so poorly attended, and I'm glad to see that so many people have come here today. I think it was advertised on the council's website, in your Brent emails which go out on a regular basis. It's been advertised on the council's billboards outside. I've seen them because I work with the comms department to make sure that is communicated and advertised. And when people come and speak to us about the budget, we can actually take that into account. And in February, we have the council's cabinet meeting that will be taking the budget forward and taking that to full council at the end of February. We have Matt's budget scrutiny meeting tomorrow, where we're actually discussing some of the budget and how we're allocating some of those funds. And the only way I can allocate funds is if people take an interest and come to those meetings and actually make their comments in relation to that.
Can I interrupt you for a minute and say, will you take this meeting and the extraordinary turnout here as people saying that they would like more money to be allocated to tree maintenance? Yes. In the interest of time, I have promised a few more people, I know we're way over time. So,
just on that budget question, on the maintenance one. Look, Chris and Tony and Gary have already expressed. When it comes to the normal maintenance program, we just don't have the resources. As I said, we've gone from 12, 13 million pounds a year down to 4.5 million pounds. How am I going to be spending £4.5 million in making sure, right, that the pavement and the roads are kept safe and sound, as the gentleman there was talking about? When he walked around the streets, I was with a lady who was in a wheelchair the other day and trying to circumnavigate our streets. And she was struggling to get over the pavement.
Thank you.
Program around that, so there is a commitment there to do something very differently in promoting our trees over time, and that no doubt will require a review of the resources that are necessary to make that a reality. So there is something there that everyone's aware of and we need to act upon. The other thing that we're doing is also starting to develop, certainly over the past 2 years, a real programme of change around biodiversity and the natural habitats within the borough of Brent. So we've created meadows and other features in our parks and open spaces that we're now very proud of. Trees sit central to all of that as well. So we cannot neglect our tree stock when we're making commitments to developing the natural habitats within Brent anyway. So we do make that commitment. But, you know, in terms of resources overall, in relation to all our frontline services, again, these are required to be very balanced political decisions over time and need to account for many other priorities across the council's operations. So I don't know whether Councillor Butt would like to add anything.
As Chris just said, we do have priorities, right, that we do need to manage. And look, I can't stand here and say to you now, right, that I'm going to commit an extra £500,000 or £1 million into this, right? Because I tell you for why. That £500,000 will have to come from somewhere else, right? Or I'm going to have to take a look at increasing fees and charges, or I'm going to have to take a look at increasing council tax, or it's something along those lines. So something or someone will have to pay for that extra expense. Right? So, and for me to stand here and to say to you, I'm going to put that money in, and I don't know where it's coming from. Right, it's not right, and it would not be appropriate for me to make that commitment here today and to say that. What we have said is we'll make sure Brent trees are part and parcel of the conversation going forward. Right, we're changing the way that we're going to be engaging and communicating and working with residents to make sure, right, that people understand why we're taking down the trees
Please let him finish. Please let him finish.
Once again, as I said.